Okay, let's look at another example of type of sentence or an issue with a sentence that might make it difficult for us to understand later when we come back to read it, or for our readers to understand it when they look at it. So I'll give you an example here. She stifled a chuckle when she watched a merchant who stopped to argue with the stable master drop his basket and sprint away. Merchant, what is that? Alright. Okay. So this sentence can be challenging for a reader because the reason being we have a subject of a verb, merchant, who is really far away from the verb, verbs that it's doing, because we have this clause that's essentially interrupting the sentence. This is already a chunky sentence, right? She stifled a chuckle when she watched a merchant. It's already getting chunky by the time we get here. And then we have this who stopped to argue with the stable master, drop his basket, and sprint away. So this sentence could really trip up our reader. As they're reading it, they'll have to read it a couple times, twice or something, to understand it. So what are some easy fixes for this when we have a clause like this interrupting our subject and verb? Well, one thing we can do is we could move the clause all the way to the front of the sentence, right? Boy, I say right a lot when I make these videos, don't I? But we can move to the front, right? I'm going to say something like, after stopping to argue with the stable master, she stifled a chuckle when she, wait, she's not the one who does the after. A merchant also dropped his basket and sprinted away, making her stifle a chuckle. Okay, so we moved that to the front, which kind of caused us to push the front part all the way to the back. Well, that's one thing we can think of. We can think of moving it to the front. We could also do the opposite. We could push it all the way to the back. Maybe that would be a better way to do it. So we could say, she stifled a chuckle when she watched a merchant drop his basket and sprint away. Oops, bad typer. Right. After stopping to argue with the stable master. So that's something we could do. That gets, both of these get the subject of the verb and the verb closer together, right? Or right next to each other, which makes this easier to understand. Sometimes though it can create other problems. She stifled a chuckle when she watched a merchant drop his basket and sprint away after stopping to argue with the stable master. This one reads a lot better, but creates a new problem maybe. We don't know if who stopped to argue with the stable master. Did the merchant stop, or did she stop to argue with the stable master. So that can create ambiguity. So another fix might be just to split this up into two separate sentences. Say the merchant stopped to argue with the stable master. Afterwards, she stifled a chuckle as he dropped his basket and sprinted away. As long as we know who she is, right? Anyway, so there's some options there. There's also another option. We could use punctuation to fix this. The M dash actually is really handy to help visually for the reader to see what's going on here. So we say she stifled a chuckle when she watched a merchant, and we put a M dash here, who stopped to argue with the stable master, put an M dash there, drop his bucket and sprint away. Similarly, we can do commas instead. An M dash is like a super comma, really, in a lot of ways, though it's not a semicolon. Anyway, it gives us a visual clue that this part, who stopped to argue with the stable master, is separate, so our brain should process that separately. She stifled a chuckle when she watched a merchant, who stopped to argue with the stable master, drop his basket and sprint away. So our brain pauses here and then picks up again there. So that's another way we can handle that to make it more readable. Let's do one more example, because I know these aren't boring at all for you in these videos. So let's say we have a sentence: the merchant who stopped to bargain with a blacksmith whom he claimed had cheated him the previous spring missed the last ferry across the river. Okay, we have commas helping us out here, but this can still trip up the reader because our subject of our verb, the merchant, is really far away from our verb itself. We might even forget what we're talking about by the time we get to the verb. Or what we really want to say is we want to say the merchant missed the last ferry across the river. That's what's really happening in our sentence. But we've got this modifying information. We were trying to give some additional information about our merchant. Our merchant who stopped to bargain with the blacksmith, right? That's modifying him, tell us more about him. And we're modifying again, whom he claimed had cheated him the previous spring. So again, we're modifying the merchant, telling us a little bit, giving us a little more information, context about what's going on with this blacksmith. But that's a lot. So what can we do? Well, one solution is to maybe push all of this up front so that we can have our subject and verb right next to each other. Cause us to rephrase a little bit, but we can do it. So we just say stopping to bargain with the blacksmith whom he claimed. What was that? Stropping. What the heck? Anyway, let's just get rid of that. How do we say stopping to bargain with a blacksmith? Blah, 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 whom he claimed had cheated him the previous spring. The merchant missed the last ferry across the river. Right? We put our subject and verb together by pushing all of that in front, or we can push it all in behind and maybe it won't confuse things. We could say the merchant missed the last ferry across the river after stopping to bargain with a blacksmith whom he claimed had cheated him the previous spring. Right? It's whenever you have a sentence that confuses you, one thing to look for is, do you have this large separation between your subject and your verb here, right? Do you have clauses interrupting your subject and verb? And then you might want to look for a way, well, how can I get my subject and my verb closer together to make this less confusing? Anyway, hope you weren't bored to death with this video. Have fun with the rest of your beautiful day.